Ever think about, like, all those big heroes in history?
Mm-hmm.
But we never really get the down and dirty on how they actually, like, did the stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what did it really take to get people out of Nazi territory during World War II? I just finished this book, Saints and Liars,
Oh, yeah.
by Deborah Dwork. And it's full of these stories about just normal Americans
Right?
who just, like, stepped up and did these wild things during the war. We're talking Quakers, Jews, Unitarians, just people who are like, nope, not on my watch.
It's so interesting how Dort kind of like zooms in on these people, right?
Yeah.
Each chapter's like a different person or sometimes a couple
Oh, wow.
working in a different place. And suddenly this whole massive historical event, it becomes like all these little personal stories about courage and risk and even just plain luck.
So we're talking about impossible choices,
Yeah.
bureaucratic nightmares, the constant threat of getting caught.
Yeah.
You would not believe some of the things they pulled off.
I bet.
So imagine you're a Unitarian minister in Prague.
Okay.
Nazis are closing in.
Oh.
And you got to get this train full of refugees to safety.
Yeah.
How do you even start with that?
That's Martha and Wait Still Sharp. And their story is bonkers.
Okay, so tell me more. What did they do?
They were working in total secrecy, setting up escapes, forging documents. They even made a whole illegal currency exchange
Whoa.
to like fund the whole thing.
Hold on. Illegal currency exchange.
Well,
like how?
yeah, Waitstill was risking like 25 years in prison for that.
25 years. That's some serious dedication.
Yeah.
But did everyone in the book do stuff that was straight up illegal? Were they all like perfect saints?
That's the thing. The book doesn't try to make them all out to be saints. They were real people with, flaws and their own ambitions.
Great, that's that.
And sometimes that's what helped them succeed.
Really?
Yeah. Take Moses Duckelman.
Okay.
He was a social worker in Lithuania with the JDC.
Okay.
And he was like super dedicated to helping refugees. But he had a hard time really connecting with all the suffering he was seeing.
I can imagine that'd be tough.
There's this one part he's talking about finding this group of refugees stuck in no man's land.
Oh, no.
They're starving, freezing. And he says he just felt kind of numb.
Wow. So, like, he just shut down.
It's almost like he had to cope. It makes you think about the toll it all took on these people.
Yeah, for sure. It wasn't just physical danger, right? It was like emotional, mental, too.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got the Sharps in Prague, Beckelman in Lithuania. Who else?
Well, there's Laura Margolis, the first woman to be a field agent for the JDC.
Cool.
She got sent to Shanghai.
Shanghai. What was happening there?
Shanghai was already this crazy mix of different cultures, but then it became like the port of last resort for refugees from all over Europe.
I bet that was a lot to handle.
Imagine trying to find food and shelter
Oh, I can't even imagine.
and ways to get people to emigrate onward
Yeah.
in a city that's already packed.
And then Pearl Harbor happens.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So suddenly you're trapped
Exactly.
in a city controlled by the Japanese with thousands of refugees looking to you for help. That takes some serious guts.
Yeah, that situation really highlights how unpredictable everything was.
Right.
You could have this whole plan and then bam, everything changes. But these people, they kept going.
Yeah.
They adapted to whatever was thrown at them, and they figured out ways to handle all these crazy situations.
They had to, right. So it wasn't just like individuals working on their own. There were groups, organizations.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like I mentioned, the JDC was a big one, the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee.
Okay.
They were doing a lot of work all over Europe.
So like connecting people, getting resources.
Exactly. Funding, logistics, everything.
Wow. So they weren't just like handing out food. They were like masterminding these whole escape routes.
Yeah, it was a huge undertaking.
And it sounds like they weren't afraid to push the boundaries either.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like with Waitstill and that currency exchange thing.
Okay, so if the JDC was so involved, was it just like Jewish people helping Jewish people? Or were other groups involved too?
Oh, it wasn't just the Jewish community. Dwork talks about all sorts of people who stepped up.
Like who?
Like, remember I mentioned Quakers?
Yeah.
There were these incredible Quaker couples working in places like Marseille,
Okay.
which was like a major hub for refugees trying to get out of Europe.
I can see why. Like right on the coast.
Exactly. Easy access to the sea.
Right.
And then there were the Unitarians, like the Sharps. They were incredibly active in rescue efforts, too.
So it was like a whole network of different groups working together.
It was this amazing tapestry of people from different backgrounds, different faiths, different motivations, but united by this common goal of saving lives.
It really makes you think about how people can come together in times of crisis.
Absolutely. And Dwork does such a good job of showing how these different groups interacted and sometimes clashed.
Oh, really?
It wasn't always smooth sailing.
I bet. Okay, so we've got the Sharps in Prague, Beckelman in Lithuania, Margolis in Shanghai, Quakers and Unitarians all over the place. Who else are we going to learn about?
Well, there's one couple that really stands out, Marjorie and Ross McClelland.
Okay.
They were Quakers working in Marseille, like I mentioned, and their story is just intense.
Why? What did they do?
They were right in the thick of it, trying to help refugees escape, and one of their main tasks was selecting children for convoys to the United States.
Oh, wow. That's a huge responsibility.
Can you imagine having to choose who gets a chance at life and who might not make it?
That's heavy. So how did they even begin to make those decisions?
Dwork talks about how Marjorie, especially, would sometimes make choices based on these really gut-wrenching factors.
Like what?
Like the desperation she saw in a mother's eyes, or child's smile, things that just tugged at her heart.
Oh, wow. I can see why their story would be intense.
Yeah.
It sounds like they were dealing with a lot of emotional stuff on top of everything else.
Definitely. They were constantly under pressure, facing these really tough ethical dilemmas. And things were always changing. Deportations of Jews from France started.
Oh, so the stakes just kept getting higher.
Exactly. It was this constant race against time, and it took a toll on everyone involved. I mean, how do you even begin to process that kind of pressure, knowing that every decision could mean life or death?
It's hard to even wrap your head around. But even with all that pressure, they kept going, right?
They did, and they found ways to navigate these incredibly complex situations, and sometimes that meant bending the rules, working outside the system.
So it wasn't always straightforward black and white decision-making.
Not at all. It was messy, it was emotional, it was sometimes even a little bit shady, but they were doing what they felt they had to do to save lives.
It sounds like they were operating in this constant state of uncertainty.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that makes Saints and Liars so compelling. It really captures the tension and the ambiguity of this period in history.
Okay, so we've got the McClellans in Marseille, and we talked about the Sharps working in Prague. Were there any other key locations where these rescue efforts were happening?
Oh, yeah, there were several, like Lisbon, for example. It became this crucial escape route from Europe.
Right, because it was neutral during the war.
Exactly. So a lot of people were trying to get there, hoping to catch a ship to safety.
Makes sense. It was like the last open door. So who was working in Lisbon?
Well, Dwork focuses on this couple, Elizabeth and Robert Dexter. They were leading the Unitarian Service Committee there.
Okay, so the Unitarians were active there too. What were the Dexters like? Were they similar to the Sharps?
They were both very dedicated, obviously, but, each person had their own style, their own way of doing things. And Lisbon presented its own unique challenges.
I bet. What kind of challenges?
Well, just getting people onto ships was a major hurdle. Space was limited, demand was high, and there were all sorts of bureaucratic hoops to jump through. And then, of course, there was the constant threat of the Gestapo.
So it wasn't just about finding a ship. It was about outsmarting the Nazis at every turn.
Pretty much. And Dwork describes this one incredible scene where Elizabeth is racing against time to get this refugee family onto a ship that's already fully booked.
Oh, wow. So, like, a last-minute scramble.
Total nail-biter. She's using every ounce of persuasion, every connection she has, and just a touch of luck to make it happen. It's like something out of a spy movie.
So they were resourceful, but it sounds like they had to be tough too.
Yeah, you had to be tough to survive in that environment, but it wasn't all about being tough and resourceful. There were also a lot of internal conflicts and disagreements among the rescuers themselves.
Really? Like what?
Well, Dwork talks about this growing tension between the Dexters and another Unitarian worker, Charles Joy.
Oh, so it wasn't just the external pressures they were dealing with, but internal struggles too.
Exactly. And that's what makes Saints and Liars so fascinating. It's not just about the heroics, it's about the human drama that unfolded behind the scenes.
It's a good reminder that even in the midst of a shared goal, people are still people. They have different personalities, different approaches, and sometimes those differences clash.
Exactly. And those clashes sometimes had real consequences for the rescue efforts themselves.
Okay, so we've met a bunch of these incredible people, heard about their challenges and their successes. But what about the people they were rescuing? What were their stories like?
That's what we're going to dive into next. We'll explore the lives of the refugees, their journeys, the challenges they faced, and the incredible resilience they showed. But you'll have to join us for part 2 to hear more.
I'm already hooked. Can't wait to hear what else Dwork uncovers in Saints and Liars.
You know, one thing that really got to me was how the book makes you think about what a hero really is.
Yeah, it's not like those perfect savior types you see in movies, right?
Exactly. They weren't superheroes. They were regular people doing what they felt they had to.
With their own reasons, I bet. Like, not just duty, but maybe some ambition thrown in there.
Yeah, totally. And Dwork doesn't try to hide that. She shows him grappling with these impossible choices. Like, remember Beckelman?
Mm.
Haunted by what he saw, but also kind of driven by his own goals.
So it's like even the most dedicated people can get messed up by what they see and do.
No doubt. It makes you think, how do you stay compassionate but not lose yourself when you're surrounded by suffering all the time?
Like, how do you even function?
That's a question that's still relevant today, especially for people working in those kind of fields.
Makes sense. And it wasn't just him. Like Marjorie McClellan choosing who got on those convoys.
Oh, man.
Dwork says she'd lie awake at night second-guessing herself. Like, did I make the right choice?
That's a heavy burden to carry. Knowing your decisions literally mean life or death for someone.
You can't just forget that.
And it wasn't just the emotional side either. They were exhausted, too.
Oh, yeah. Constantly on the move, right?
All the travel, the paperwork, the Nazis breathing down their necks. No wonder some of them burned out.
Like, how could you keep up that pace forever?
It really makes you wonder how sustainable that kind of work is when the need is so huge and you're always fighting an uphill battle.
So what kept them going then? If it was so tough?
I think part of it was seeing the impact they were having, that even one person could make a difference.
So it wasn't about waiting for someone else to fix it. They just did what they could.
Exactly. And Dwork highlights that. They weren't waiting for governments or anyone else. They just saw a need and jumped in.
Even breaking the law sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah, they had to work around the system, bend the rules a bit.
Wow. So it was like a constant push and pull between doing what's right and what's allowed.
It's a powerful reminder that even with these massive problems, individual action still matters.
So, like, it's not always about those big heroic things.
No, it's the little things, too. The everyday choices that ripple out and affect others.
And that's a good way to put it, like a chain reaction.
The book makes you think about your own values. Like, what side of history do I want to be on? What am I willing to do?
Especially with everything going on in the world today. Those questions feel even more relevant.
You know, one thing that really stood out to me was the women.
Oh, yeah.
It was like they were working within these limited roles, but they still managed to make things happen.
It's amazing, isn't it? Like Martha Sharp, she was more than just the minister's wife.
Right. She was running estates, escorting people, standing up to the Gestapo.
And Laura Margolis dealing with Shanghai, and then suddenly it's Japanese controlled.
Talk about a curveball. So they were breaking down barriers, showing what women could do.
Especially at a time when their contributions were often ignored. Dwork brings their stories to the front.
Gives them the credit they deserve. And it wasn't just individual achievements either, right?
No, it was the collective power of women working together, supporting each other.
Using their skills and experiences to make a difference. You see that in how they built networks, shared information.
Advocated for the refugees. It's a testament to all the unsung women in humanitarian work then and now. It's like our view of history gets so much richer when we include all those different voices.
Totally. It makes you think about the stories we choose to tell and how they shape how we see things now.
And what we imagine for the future.
Mm.
So by highlighting these women, the work's doing more than just correcting history.
She's inspiring people to step up and speak out.
That's a powerful message, especially today when women are still fighting for equality. It's like this reminder that the fight's not over.
And that women have always been leading the charge. But there's another layer to all this we need to talk about.
Okay, what's that?
The ethical dilemmas they faced. Making these impossible choices.
Like who gets helped, who gets left behind?
Yeah, and sometimes breaking the law to do what they thought was right. But those are tough calls, and Dwork doesn't shy away from that.
Okay, so we've seen the courage, the risks, these crazy things these rescuers did. But the book doesn't, like, try to hide the hard stuff either, right? It really makes you think about the tough choices they faced.
It really does. It's easy to judge now, knowing what happened, but these people were working with, like, no information, and things changing all the time.
They had to make decisions fast. And those decisions could mean someone lived or died.
Exactly.
Like Marjorie McClellan picking which kids got on those convoys. Imagine that. Dwork says she felt like she was playing God.
Oh, wow.
Choosing who got a chance at life and who didn't.
It's tough to read about that, knowing she didn't have time to think it through. or all the facts.
Right.
Then there's Waite Still Sharp with that illegal currency exchange.
Risking his own neck to help others.
Was it the right thing to do? It's a question that sticks with you.
Yeah.
Dork doesn't give you easy answers. It's like she's making us think about what's right and wrong when everything's going crazy.
Like, when is it okay to break the rules?
Exactly. And even then, who do you help first?
Right, like everyone needed help.
The book mentions how the Unitarians focused on saving intellectuals and artists. So it raises this whole issue of, like, are some lives more important than others? Were they right to focus on them instead of people who are maybe more vulnerable?
It's a tough question.
Dork doesn't shy away from that. It's like a reminder that even with good intentions, you still got to make hard choices.
So history's not just dates and names. It's about the human side of it all.
The decisions people made, the consequences, good and bad.
And sometimes those rescued people ended up facing even more hardship in their new homes.
It wasn't always a happy ending.
It makes you think that getting out was just the start of another tough journey for a lot of them.
Yeah.
But even with all that, we can't forget the good stuff. Right.
Of course not.
The courage, the compassion at the heart of all this.
It's a testament to how resilient people can be. How even in the face of this awful evil, there's still good in the world.
They risked it all to help strangers. Faced down hate and found a way to make a difference, even when it seemed impossible.
And their stories remind us that even small acts of kindness matter.
That we can all do something to make things better, even if it seems like a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
So what do you think after all this? What really stuck with you from Saints and Liars?
For me, it's that we all have a choice to make. To sit back and watch or do something.
Even when it's hard, even when it's scary.
The legacy of these people lives on in those choices we make.
That's a great way to put it. What about you out there? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments. And if you like this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it around. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions,